Steven Spielberg is a household name, a Hollywood legend, an architect of iconography. And yet, like a coin, the famed director has two sides. There's the Spielberg of our childhood, the man who gave us joyous, wonderful magic, endless worlds to escape into. And then there's the man himself, the Jewish-born director who's lived a life rich with experience and emotion, with tales he burns to tell, stories he can't help but share. In 1993, Spielberg's metaphorical coin was tossed into the air, each side fighting and spinning for the light. The director took on two of the most challenging and antithetical projects of his career. For your average filmmaker, this would, at best, dilute talent and time, resulting in a shared mediocrity. At worst, however, it would be a sentence of doom, each project crumbling underneath the shared weight of their ambition. We should be thankful then that Steven Spielberg is not your average filmmaker. For 1993 is the year that he conquered both the box office and the Oscars, producing two of his finest features, Jurassic Park, the dinosaur spectacular, and Schindler's List, a harrowing tribute to the loss of millions and the selflessness of one. Growing up, movie making was something of an escape for Steven Spielberg. A child of divorce and an outcast at school, the young filmmaker would bunk off his classes, Super 8 camera in tow, exploiting his passion as a means of averting reality.
I mean, he'd want to do something harebrained, like go out in the desert and make a movie. And I'd keep him home from school, and I used to lie. I wrote marvelous notes.
It is this yearning for acceptance and love that brought us wondrous fictions the likes of Indiana Jones or Close Encounters of the Third Kind. This is the Spielberg who was approached come the start of the 1990s with an offer of a bold new picture. Michael Crichton, famed for his work on the 1973 feature Westworld, had written a new book, and Spielberg would be perfect to direct. Devouring the yet unprinted pages of a dinosaur epic, Spielberg was instantly attached to the story before him, at once snatching up the rights, narrowly beating the not unnotable talents of fellow filmmaker James Cameron by just a few short hours. At the same time, Spielberg found himself drawn to another written text, one with a far more personal and powerful tale at its core. From a young age, the filmmaker was exposed to tales of tragedy from those around him who had suffered through the Holocaust, the horrific subjugation and attempted extermination of the Jewish people during the Second World War. These stories, naturally, stuck with Spielberg, who gradually became more confident and a little more than competent in his craft. It was on the set of E.T. that the director was first shown the book that would allow him to shed light on his people's suffering, Schindler's Ark. Adapting this work, even for a filmmaker with Spielberg's clout, was to be no mean feat. For starters, there was little precedent for such a production. Previous filmic ventures into the Holocaust had been largely documentary in format, releases like Shoah and Night and Day. More worryingly, however, was the fact that there appeared to be little commercial merit to undertaking such a cinematic endeavour. Spielberg insisted on a monochromatic format for the movie, a caveat which robbed the prints of their marketability and added another layer of bleakness to an intensely sombre picture.
I was the only one that wanted to shoot the picture in black and white. No, but the studio didn't. They didn't think they could sell a cassette if it was in black and white. And at one point that they were negotiating with me, they said, shoot it in color, we'll release the film in black and white, but then we'll release the cassette in color. And I said, no, I don't know the Holocaust in color. I wasn't around then, but I've seen documentaries on the Holocaust, and anybody who's seen any documentaries, they're all shot in black and white.
The only way Spielberg could have any hope of adapting this story would be if he could produce some light to balance such a dark picture. Say, for instance, a groundbreaking work of popcorn entertainment, allowing a studio to make its millions and in turn greenlight his passion piece. Dinosaurs were his way into the Holocaust, but for Spielberg that didn't mean the dinosaurs were to be neglected. Ever rich with ambition, the director could be forgiven for churning out a generic action adventure with Jurassic Park. Instead, though, he sought to revolutionise the creature feature. Lamenting the fact that monster effects in film had not evolved beyond the stop-motion practicals seen in 1933's King Kong, Spielberg sought to push the boundaries of contemporary cinema. With computer-generated technology, Jurassic Park would give its audiences dinosaurs that could run and leap and chomp at protagonists, affording the franchise a relentless sense of danger that was unprecedented amongst movies at the time. This would, however, put a mite of strain on the flick's post-production, as it was here that filmmakers would finally breathe life into the world their cameras had captured, realising with computers what they could not with practicals. Unfortunately for Spielberg, post-production for Jurassic Park took place throughout the spring of '93, a time when the director found himself stuck in Poland filming his next feature, Schindler's List, a project far removed from the heightened fantasies of a dinosaur theme park gone wrong. Helming the epic actions of Jurassic Park had been the price of admission for Spielberg's journey into Nazi-occupied Poland, allowing him to claim back the novel's rights from acclaimed movie maker Martin Scorsese. Hollywood is a notoriously fickle beast, however, and Spielberg feared that the cold feet of profit-hungry investors would inevitably shut down his more personal production. Speed then was of the essence. Schindler's List had to be made while the opportunity existed, and if Jurassic Park did not meet the box office demands of the studio, the director would find himself in quite the critical scenario, with his personal earnings for both movies coming down to the success of one. This meant that Spielberg sought to recreate one of the bleakest periods in human history, filming scenes in their real locations and using a cast and crew with personal connections to the war they were revisiting. He also spent his nights on phone calls and video chats, offering his approval or critique on the current state of Jurassic Park's visual effects. The director came to loathe the process, resenting his work on the former production for the fact that it detracted from the weight of the second. In his own words, looking back at the production clash of his past, he reflected that I built a tremendous amount of resentment and anger that I had to do this, that I had to actually go from the heft of Schindler's List to dinosaurs chasing jeeps, and all I could express was how angry that made me at the time. I was grateful later in June though, but until then it was a burden. Such was the internal torment caused by the heft of two multi-million-dollar productions that Spielberg sought help from his friends in stardom. The late, great and ever-celebrated Robin Williams, a friend of Spielberg's from their time together making Hook, was the director's first source of injected levity at a time when he needed it most. The director would reportedly phone the actor at points of crisis, who would respond with 15 minutes of his stand-up comedy routine, talking and talking until he heard a laugh so big he saw fit to cut the call, leaving his colleague and friend in as good a place as he could. Adam Sandler recounted a similar experience in an interview with popular American personality Howard Stern.
Somebody gave him my number and he left a nice message, and he was shooting Schindler's List. He left a message saying that that making the movie was very depressing, and during the shoot it was very difficult for. And he said somebody brought that song up. They had a tape of it, and that they watched that, and it would help him laugh.
In the end, Spielberg drew from all the support he had around him to pull through the gargantuan productions of both Jurassic Park and Schindler's List. He succeeded in reconciling the two distinct sides of his directing talent, appeasing at once his yearning for escapist fantasy and grounded drama. Jurassic Park was very nearly a James Cameron production, Schindler's List a Scorsese epic. Thankfully, both of these projects instead landed in the lap of arguably the most influential director of all time. And with each, he put a stamp on cinema so firm that for decades to come, these works would be lauded amongst Hollywood's finest. The summer of 1993 saw box office records smashed to pieces with the gargantuan release of Jurassic Park, at the time the highest grossing feature of all time. 6 months later, in December, Schindler's List debuted, and along with finding its own commercial success, earned Spielberg a long overdue victory at the 1994 Academy Awards. Cinema wouldn't be what it is today without the works of Steven Spielberg. He changed the landscape forevermore, and inspired armies of movie makers to come. But arguably, Spielberg himself wouldn't be the man he is today were it not for his work on these two features. 1993 is the year that permanently evolved cinema, both in a practical sense, with the introduction of realistic-looking CGI, and also in a personal sense, proving to filmmakers far and wide that there is an audience and a respect for haunting tributes and tales of woe. More than this though, 1993 is a year that helped cement Spielberg as the iconic powerhouse he is known as today. Spielberg went to hell and back for the love of his art, and to do justice to the works he'd found himself committed to. And aren't we all just so damn glad he did?